Hey guys, how you going? So we're on session 2 and we are going to be looking at interactions between organisms. And now this is the kind of defining feature of ecosystems, looking specifically at how the different organisms that live in that ecosystem will interact with one another. Now, ecosystems and habitats have different relationships and the interactions that occur within them. The interactions can also be kind of two-way and affect both components of the ecosystem. You'll hear me use the word interaction and relationship somewhat interchangeably because in many ways interactions are relationships that are forming between these different organisms. It's simply the way that they interact with one another that forms those relationships. We're going to focus mainly on two different types of relationships in this session, and that is the predator-prey relationship, in which one organism kills and eats another organism, and competition, in which two organisms will compete for the same resource, which could be food or space or even mating rights. Okay, we're going to look at predator and prey first, and that's kind of the majority of this session is going to be focused on predator-prey relationships. So in this relationship, the predator will kill and consume the prey. Now this could be part of the prey or all of the prey, but regardless, it has to kill and consume the prey. Okay, predator-prey relationships pretty much apply to all organisms. Now this includes plants, bacteria, fungus, and all these other kingdoms as well. Okay, so it's not just applying to animals. You got to think of it as applying to all of them. Okay, this relationship is often represented in your food chains and your food webs. That's what you commonly see in predators and prey represented. Predators have these adaptations that allow them to capture and consume their food. And so for a predator, you have to be really good at catching your prey. And so they develop these features that allows them to do that so they can survive better. Prey, on the other hand, have to avoid being captured by the predators, and so they have these adaptations that counter those processes so that they can in turn survive better as well. And so I'll give you one example. This is the golden eagle. It has the largest territory of any eagle, and it spans all the way through Europe and Asia and North America as well. So as a predator, more specifically as an apex predator, the golden eagle has to be really good at hunting its prey. And so it is a very large eagle. Its wingspan goes up to about 3 meters. It has really keen eyesight that's binocular, meaning they both face the front so it can see depth, and it can see depth really well. It has these large beaks and large talons to grip and grasp its prey, and it can fly really fast. Okay, one of the prey that the golden eagle targets is the groundhog, and so the groundhog has to also have adaptations that counter being captured by the eagle, and so the groundhog often lives in communities. It has a burrow which it can retreat into, and groundhogs tend to be very fast runners so they can escape being caught by the eagle. And so that is just an example of how predator and prey will interact with one another. Okay. Over time, the relationship between predators and prey will are typically balanced. Now this can change if there's some sort of disturbance, but if there's no disturbance, you should typically see this kind of pattern in terms of their populations. And so this blue line here represents the prey population within a species, which goes up and down over a period of time. Okay. Now the predator population will be about down here, and that also goes up and down, but you can see that there's a slight difference between the patterns of the population of prey, which is up here, and then the population of predators, which is here. Okay. Long term, predator populations are always smaller than prey populations. That is because a single predator needs to have multiple prey to hunt for. If there are more predators than prey, then the predators will run out of food, and therefore their populations will drop. Okay. You'll notice that there is a difference in peaks between prey population and predator population. That is, as the prey population rises, the predator population will also rise to follow it. Now, have a think about why that is. Yeah? The more prey you have in a population or within a habitat, the more food is available and easier to catch for the predator, and so the predator population will follow the prey population as it rises until it hits its peak. However, you'll also notice that the peak of the predator population is delayed compared to the peak of the prey population. And that's because by the time the predator population reaches higher and higher and higher and reaches a peak, the prey population now, on the other hand, will start to drop because there are more predators hunting it, and so the populations will drop, and as prey populations drop down, the predator population here will also drop down as well. And so over time you kind of get this balanced pattern between the two populations, and it starts all over again. Okay. Now we class predators into two categories. They are either classed as specialists, which feed mainly on one type of food, okay, or one or two types of food. Now, if you are a specialist, because you only target one species of prey, then you will have really good adaptations that allow you to hunt that prey, capture that prey with great proficiency, and so that's a real advantage. The disadvantage, however, is because you only target one type of food, you're particularly reliant on that type of food, and so if it runs out for any reasons in rapidly changing conditions, you're going to struggle to adapt. Okay, a good example: blue whales have these particular structures in place of their teeth called baleen, and baleen are really good at capturing krill, which is a small crustacean. And so the blue whale, the world's largest animal, weighing up to 30 tons and being at a length of about 40 meters, pretty much eat only one type of food, the krill, which is a small prawn-like crustacean. And so it's really good at catching large amounts of krill, but it is incredibly reliant on those krill. Okay. Another common animal that you probably know are cows that eat pretty much all grass, and so they've developed specialized stomachs with multiple chambers to digest and to break down and to get as much energy from the grass that they eat as possible. Okay. Likewise with the giant panda, which feeds almost exclusively off bamboo. Okay. Now the other category is the generalist category, in which a predator will feed on different types of food or different types of prey. This gives them the advantage of a wider selection, so they're less affected by changing conditions. If one of their food sources runs out for whatever reason, they've still got a few others. The disadvantage, though, is that they don't specialize in killing any one type of prey. And so if you put a generalist and a specialist in the same habitat, the specialist will outcompete the generalist in terms of that particular food source. However, the generalist survives still because it has more selection to choose from. And so they've kind of got more generalized structures. Lions will hunt pretty much anything from small mammals all the way to your buffaloes and your giraffes. Raccoons are really good at at eating all sorts of food, which is why, you know, when urbanization happens, they can just easily move into urban areas and hunt a different type of food. Eagles, falcons, and many birds of prey will hunt multiple species of prey, and orcas or killer whales will hunt multiple species of fish. Now, an animal doesn't have to fall into a category of just generalist or just specialist, but they actually lie on opposite ends of a spectrum, and depending on how much variety the organism has in its diet, it'll fit somewhere in between. So it's more of a spectrum rather than one or the other. Okay. Now we're going to talk a little bit about adaptations and how predators and prey will have adaptations to take advantage and survive better given these situations. But before we do that, we have to understand that predation is broken down into 4 stages: detection, attack, capture, and consumption. And anywhere along those stages, predator and prey will have adaptations that allow them to maximize survival in those particular scenarios. Okay. For predators, detection could be having really good eyesight to be able to spot your prey. Golden eagles, as our example before, can see up to 1 kilometer away, so that is a detection adaptation. Okay. Attack, crocodiles, Nile crocodiles, saltwater crocodiles in Australia will use an ambush strategy, which is a stealth, where they sit and they wait for their prey, and when their prey come, they will attack and launch at their prey. Cheetahs will utilize speed to attack their prey. So to get to their prey, a cheetah can run from 0 to 100 within 5 seconds. And so its phenomenal speed allows it to catch up to its prey really fast. However, the disadvantage is that it can't maintain it for a long period of time. Okay. The mantis shrimp will have these claws that it is able to snap at its prey, and so whenever a fish or another organism gets too close to the mantis shrimp, it can snap the prey and capture the prey within its claws. These little guys are pretty much the coolest thing in the animal kingdom, in my opinion. They've got sick eyes, totally unrelated, but they've got these sick eyes that can actually see right into the infrared spectrum, right up to the ultraviolet spectrum, and their eyes can actually see with trinocular vision. So that is, they can actually see in 3D with each eye. Now we need both of our eyes to be able to see in 3D and to perceive depth, but they don't have that problem. So it's quite an amazing adaptation for such a little fella. Okay. For capture, the inland taipan, Australia's pretty much most venomous snake, and also the deadliest snake in terms of the number of people that it targets and its dosage levels, is an organism that takes advantage of the capture method, and it will bite its prey and then it will just go off and wait for its prey to die before it comes back to consume it. Okay. Organisms that have adaptations for consumption, it's less noticeable, but a good example would have been the cows that you saw before, and also another organism would be vultures, which take advantage by feeding on dead carrion, that is, animals that have already died. And so they've got specialized stomachs to be able to handle all the bacteria that is in those dead carcasses. Okay. Now for prey, they have to avoid each of those particular phases, and so the first one is avoiding detection. The predator can't kill you if he can't find you, so it helps prey avoid being detected using methods like camouflage and counter shading. So camouflage, this is the leaf-tailed gecko, and the leaf-tailed gecko pretty much looks like a leaf, and so it's really hard for predators to see it because it blends in really well with its environment. Penguins actually have a method called counter shading. Now counter shading is when your bottom half is different from your top half, right? And so for penguins, their bottom half, the part that faces down as they swim through the water, is white, and that actually means that whatever's below them, when it looks up, will find it harder to see the outline of the penguin compared to the sky that's above the water. Okay. The top half is black, which means that any organism that is above the penguin looking down will have trouble seeing its outline compared to the dark ocean floor below. Yeah, so counter shading is a really good method to avoid being detected. Now, avoiding detection is also really good for predators, and so predators will sometimes have camouflage and counter shading to do the same method of not being able to creep up onto your prey as well. Avoiding attack, size, defense, and warning signals are really effective methods. The Galapagos tortoise is extremely large and extremely heavy, and so once they are fully grown, pretty much nothing eats it because it's pretty much like it's too hard, too heavy, and too large for predators to target. Other animals will avoid being attacked by having warning signals, and so this snake here is called the coral snake, and so the coral snake is a venomous snake, and so it has these markings to warn off its predators that it is dangerous, and so these warning signals means that predators will generally stay away from these snakes because they know that they are dangerous and shouldn't be messed with. Okay. Other animals actually copy these warning signals, and so they actually employ a method called mimicry, and mimicry is when you copy a feature of another animal, and so this snake on the right here is actually the scarlet king snake. Now the scarlet king snake isn't venomous and has no venom, but it has similar markings to the coral snake, and so predators will often mistake it as being venomous and will tend to stay away. Okay. The third phase is avoiding capture. So how do you avoid being captured? Well, it's quite simple. Most animals will just run away. Having a really fast speed is really good. There's a certain safety in numbers, so animals will congregate in groups to avoid any one organism from being captured. Animals will sometimes play dead because when you play dead, usually predators don't go for dead animals because they are infected, and so by playing dead, the predator can lose interest. And lizards are a good example of organisms that will drop their tails so that you have a last-ditch effort of escaping. You lose your tail, but the rest of your body goes scot-free. Okay. One example of safety in numbers and a slight bit in camouflage is actually zebras. And so zebras actually live together in herds, and so they have these stripes. And so when they're being chased by predators like lions or hyenas, as they run, the stripes breaks the outline or the shape of the zebras, and so it makes it really hard for them to be seen, any one zebra to be seen by lions. Frogs will often play dead whenever they feel threatened because, by playing dead, the predator might lose interest and stop going for it. Now, there are only a few animals that will actually use the method of avoiding consumption, but when they are left with no other choice, they will usually go for this method, and that is actually by tasting really badly. Yeah, the granular dart frog has a toxin in its body that makes it really foul tasting, and so it's quite a noxious taste. And it has these warnings, these signals to show predators that if you eat me, you're going to get a really bad stomach or a really foul taste in your mouth. And so predators might go for it at the start, but then spit it right back out, and then they know never to target that particular species ever again. Okay. The predators and the prey adaptations can sometimes fight against each other, and so what happens is the prey and the predator will be part of what we call an evolutionary arms race. That is, they will develop an adaptation. The predator will develop an adaptation that allows it to hunt its prey better, and then in turn the prey will develop an adaptation that allows it to avoid being hunted, and then the predator continues to build on its adaptation, and you kind of get this arms race that happens between the organisms as a result. So a good example of that are bats. A lot of bats will use echolocation to hunt their prey. That is, they release an ultrasound signal out into the air, and then the ultrasound signal will bounce off different objects and fly back and is received by these really large ears that they have. And so the bat is able to actually find its prey through that echolocation method. Now, the moth has developed a counter adaptation in which it releases these little clicks which disrupt that sound signal. And so what happens is the bats need to get better at hearing for the moth, and the moth will develop its clicks even better to disrupt the signal even more. And so you get this evolutionary arms race in which bat develops echolocation, moth disrupts, bat has to fine-tune its echolocation, and the moth has to then disrupt even more, and it keeps going. And so that is what we call an evolutionary arms race. Now, the last segment that we want to talk about is competition. Competition is when one organism competes for a resource against another organism. Now, that resource could be food, it could be space, it could be mating rights, it could be anything that the organisms tend to share or need in order to survive. It usually means that both the organisms that are competing against one another have been affected negatively. And there are two types of competition: intra-specific competition, intra meaning within, and specific meaning a species. So competition that occurs between individuals within a species. I'll use the example of elephant seals. So this is a male elephant seal. Now, male elephant seals will during a certain time of the year will try and mate with as many females as possible. However, they will congregate on the beach, and all the females will kind of clump together into these harems, and the males will actually have to fight one another quite brutally, and often to the, resulting in cuts and injury and things like that, and sometimes even death. But they fight for the right to mate with the females, and so the male will have this kind of harem. The winning male will have this kind of harem of female that he can then mate with and produce offspring. The second type of competition is called interspecific competition. That is competition between species. Inter meaning between, specific meaning species. Okay, so a really good example of that is coral reefs. So within coral reefs, you've got a whole variety of different corals, and the corals will actually compete for the best space within the structures that they are on in order to feed along the water column and to get as close to the sun as possible so they can photosynthesize. And so in this little picture here, you can actually see two different species of corals. You've got one down here that's actually killing and destroying its neighboring coral up here, and what they actually do is they actually release digestive enzymes and they actually eat their opponent. And so one species of coral is competing for space against another species of coral. Okay, okay, so that's it for this session. Next session we're going to take a look at different types of relationships called symbiosis, and so I'll see you guys then. See ya.